All right, welcome everybody to the In-Secure-Ity Podcast, where we explore technology, trends, cybersecurity insights, personal journeys, I'm Drew Thompson, and this week we've got a great episode lined up about zero trust and career goals. But first, if you're listening, a quick reminder: if you're enjoying the podcast, take a second, click that follow button on whatever platform you happen to be listening on. It only takes a minute, but I think it means a whole lot to all of us that's putting this together for you. And with that, I really just want to dive in. Our first section is, a little catch up for each of us since, it's been a weekend or been a week since we've gotten to chat. Um, I'm not going to go first this time. I think we're going to go to, nobody's raising their hand. So we're going to go with Aaron. Aaron, what's up?
So I guess my interesting point out of it was insanely busy. 5 hours of rehearsal, then the recital for Amelia. So just insanely busy.
All right. So there was a rehearsal. How'd that
two
go?
rehearsals.
Two rehearsals.
Oh yeah. So they started splitting their answer to COVID was they split the performances in half. So rather than 1 3-hour, 4-hour performance, it's 1.5 to 2-hour performances. So it was like 4 hours one night.
But doesn't everybody?
The alternative of splitting the performers?
Doesn't everybody go to both performances?
So they've actually done a really good job of trying to put classes where, all the siblings are as much as they can in one recital, and all the performers are in the one recital. The more advanced performers, so they're top tumblers, they're top competitors and whatnot, they're in both performances.
Okay, interesting.
So
very cool.
So it was like 4 hours one night, one another. Interesting tie into another.
Go ahead.
A tie into an earlier podcast that we had, though, is we just replaced Amelia's computer, and the Windows snapshot, is not currently listed when you're installing Windows or setting up Windows for the first time yet. So it'll be interesting to see when they put it in.
So I think it's only for certain PCs. Like I read more on that. Existing ones aren't going to get it. It's only for certain PCs with certain processors that are meant to be able to handle the load of the AI processing. You may not see that feature on that PC. Never know. John, I interrupted you. You were about to say something to Aaron.
I don't think I was. I was bringing up the stream over here to see if the audio for everything was coming through.
Oh, okay. And?
It is.
Okay. We're good? Fantastic. Yep. And sure enough, I have a viewer. I see the one viewer. It's you, isn't it?
No, well, I am a viewer, but you almost always get after just a few seconds of it going, there's like a Twitch viewer that always joins. Okay. So it always kind of brings the number to 1, even if no one is watching.
Interesting. Well, good to know. You are the expert in the room of the three of us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So much. I am a professional streamer.
You are. Because you've been paid. Yep. Maybe one day I'll be a professional podcaster.
Well, the hustle you're putting into this, I'm sure it'll happen.
You think?
Lickety split. Yeah.
Yeah, lickety split. We'll see. John, what have you been up to?
Well, I ran a 5K this weekend.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, my third one. And I have to say, at this point, running is still stupid. So there's that. But it's a supply of cheap T-shirts, so that's good. And this one was actually close, so that was nice. Close enough to that it's a park that we walk at often, so we kind of knew the route and everything, and it wasn't as bad as the other ones, so that's cool. I'm actually doing another one in August. If you wanted to come the weekend before, we would normally do, like, we usually show up like Monday or Tuesday to do the LANCon.
Right.
That Saturday, there's a night 5K in Raleigh that we're doing. It's all night with a
Ooh.
bunch of music going on, and everyone's wearing glow in the dark stuff. Um, so I'll be doing that the Saturday before our land con.
I'll have to see if the kitchen pass extends that far.
Yeah,
Um,
the downside is you'd have to also have, well, Sunday and Monday and all that before the rest goes off. So
eh,
I wish it was like it'd be just a couple days different. And it'd be perfect. We could do it like as a group. That'd be neat.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And or if I just join, I can have some time without anybody around. That
There you
like
go.
never happens. There's like a
'Cause
certain.
I always try to beat you.
I know,
I,
right? Um,
I don't like being late for things. I like getting to things early and whatever. So I'm guessing you have the same kind of thing because it's usually you and I battling to get there first.
yeah. Oh, definitely, definitely. I mean, I think I've talked about this, like my daughter of all people. Like, I think there's a certain point in life where you're not like alone or have zero responsibilities. You know what I mean? Like, even vacation, you've still got like responsibilities with the wife and the kids, and blah 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 blah. And I was like, if I am there a day in advance and nobody else is there, I'm like actually alone and have no responsibilities for a hot minute.
Oh yeah, especially when you have kids and
Right.
everybody leaves and you're home alone and you don't have like something like, and it happens to be a time where you don't have some massive thing you need to take care of, and then you look around the house and you realize I'm gonna play some freaking video games. That's what I'm.
Yeah, yeah, yep. I don't think I could have that moment in the house. Like there would be something nagging. Like I have to be away from the house, nobody there, by myself. Be like, yep, I have no responsibilities. I'm not beholden to anybody. I might try and do the 5K. And now that I'm like telling the world this, like I might try and do the 5K and be alone for that Monday.
Well, and being alone like that's always cool because pants are optional. I like that too.
I mean, pants are optional now, I
My
guess.
my family doesn't appreciate it as much. Turns out.
No, everybody's seeing from the waist up.
Yeah,
Anyway, I do have
this is a
pants on.
pantsless podcast.
That's a pantsless podcast. Oh my. And with that, we lost the 2 viewers that we had. Yeah. You know what Tim and I were talking about that we also need to do while we're up in Raleigh. Um, you have an Alamo Draft House.
Do we?
You do. And I'm disappointed that you didn't know you have an Alamo Draft House in Raleigh. But yeah, there's an Alamo Draft House there, and there's a movie coming out like around the end of July that I think everybody on the stream or that will be at LandCon would enjoy. Do you know what movie that is?
Hackers.
No. Good guess. I'll give you 2 more.
Uh. Oh, Princess Bride.
No, it's a new release and it'll be at the Alamo Draft
Oh,
House.
a new release. Oh, uh, Deadpool 3.
Well, Deadpool and Wolverine. Yes. Yes.
So yeah, was it that third guess?
Yes. Yeah, that was the third
I
guess, and that
win.
is correct. We should all go to the Alamo Draft House.
So I might have been here. I've been to several of. I don't know if I've been. I don't know. I've been to several of these kind of places where drink a bunch of beer, watch a movie, food. I don't know if I've been to this one specifically. Let me see where it is.
So while John's looking at that for our viewers that haven't been to an Alamo Draft House, it is a movie theater, but it's a movie theater that has no previews. Yay! Very few commercials, and most of like the prior to the movie stuff is like different clips about the movie you're about to watch and things like that, which is really cool. The other thing is like it's you actually have a table in front of you for your food and drinks and such. So it's not like a cup holder or tray or anything. Like you've got a full on table, and you can place orders even during the movie. and you discreetly place them, and then somebody discreetly comes by and grabs them and brings your stuff. So yes, you can have pitchers of beer while you're watching, your favorite Deadpool movie, and full on real food. And if the pitcher of beer runs out, because you and your buddies are all drinking it, you can get another one without having to leave your seat. They are amazing.
I'm still going to be on mic, but I will be right back.
To get a beer?
Nope. Well, sort of. You shall see.
Oh, it's a surprise. Okay.
It is a surprise, but keep going.
Sure. Anyway, that's what we should do while we're there as well. And of course, LAN gaming, and podcasting, and streaming on your on the Splatiox Twitch stream, and all of those things. We're gonna have a busy week. I'm supposed to say what I was up to. So we had a fun block party this weekend on Saturday. We live on a cul-de-sac, and so all the neighbors get together and grill and bring food and play cornhole and do all those fun neighborly things. So that was pretty good times on Saturday. And then I spent a huge chunk of time working some of the podcast stuff. Again, meant to do like one little thing, and then went down a rabbit hole, and then found another rabbit hole on top of that, and found another one. And so before I knew it, we have a Discord server. So if you're listening and you see that Discord link at the bottom middle, feel free to join. You can chat with us there, right? Hang out. And if you hang out, if you're there long enough, maybe we'll even bump you up to the stage level, and you can join us on the podcast. But yeah, so we did a block party. Oh, and my daughter had a sleepover on Saturday, which was kind of fun. So yeah, pretty chill weekend. Hanging out with the neighbors, did some work. Nothing else of interest. I don't have cool gadgets like Tim does. So I really wanted to ask him about his rabbit. See how that went.
Yeah.
All right, rabbit.
His rabbit. So I've been to a couple different places that sounded just like the Alamo Draft House in a couple different places. One was up near Colonial Williamsburg, Jamestown kind of area, and I couldn't find it real quick what it was called, so I went to go get what I got from that place to see if it was called the same thing. It wasn't. It was called the Movie Tavern. But what I liked about this place, so here's like a normal, pint glass that I have. Here's the mug that I got from this place.
Oh jeez.
I mean, it's freaking ridiculous. I don't know, maybe 4 of these could fit in here, 5. I don't know. It's freaking ridiculous. This thing is huge. I could easily fit this whole glass in here. No problem. Just to put it in perspective. There's how big that thing is. Yeah, I like those places. They're a fun experience.
They are. They're a ton of fun. So we should do that. And hopefully we get a few more folks turn out to LANCon this year.
We have another place that we talked about doing before, but it was too booked. But we have, it's not Topgolf. It's another one like it. That's there too. And those are fun places to hang out, drink, and hurt yourself at.
I didn't know there was a Topgolf competitor.
Yeah, I don't. Let's see. But I'll look it up. I don't want to disturb you.
Fantastic. Well, I am surprised that some of our other...
Drive Shack.
Drive Shack.
It is. I've been to a Topgolf. It's the same place.
Okay. Is it near the Love Shack?
Beer and your food, and no, it's actually not near Love Shack. That's near Atlanta Highway.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to know. Don't tell me. Don't want to know. All right. Well, cool. Yeah.
You did get the fact that was a reference to the song, right? Down the Atlanta Highway. The Love Shack. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Can't say I ever cared for the B-52s.
But that's a fun song. It's
Yeah.
a fun song. Okay, fine. Fine. We'll move on. We'll move on. We've got topics to cover. All right. So this week's topic is on zero trust. It actually came from one of our viewers. It was suggested on LinkedIn. I hope I'm remembering it right because I forgot to pull it up, and I think it was Priya that recommended it. So thank you for the suggestions. Actually, both topics were suggestions by Priya. So appreciate that. For the viewers that are watching or going to chime in later or join Discord, we're always open to topic ideas and things to cover, both on the tech side and on the we'll call it the human topic side. I think that's what we've decided, what we settled on. So zero trust. Got some points that I'm supposed to make. I think that I'd looked up and made sure that we covered. But before I dove into that, like when I really started to look into zero trust before we brought it up on the podcast, wanted to make sure I had a good understanding of what it was. Been working with it or certainly heard about it for a while. And I think one of the best analogies, right, that I came across was I remember like back in the Asseco days. And I'm sure John, you ran into this where it talked about the fort and the moat or the castle and the moat, right? And so network security is that traditional perimeter. It's the castle walls, moat kind of thing. And I know when we worked the Asseco, we were always like, okay, well, and you've got all these big perimeters, and blah blah blah. Government's usually pretty good about building a perimeter. But what we were telling people was that their applications, the things that we were going out there to secure, was like a hole, right? Was like having the drawbridge down. So yeah, you've got your moat, but the web application is lets people in, and so you need to secure the software. Remember that, John?
Yeah, I do. I do think I recall that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we were saying, hey, you need to secure the software so that as you're letting people in, you're really letting them access whatever you want them to access. Blah 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 blah. Somebody extended that to say, okay, well, that good classic analogy that I think we've all heard in the security space. Zero trust was really like taking that, and instead of having the peasants and the other, soft, squishy targets on the inside, the peasants that you can throw out the, never mind, different stream, different show.
With the pigs?
With the pigs, right. On Chivalry 2. Right, so instead of having those on the inside, you are basically putting in a bunch of knights, right? So zero trust, you're making it to where once somebody comes in, they don't get peasants and pigs like in Civ 2, they get knights, also like in Civ 2. Right, they get somebody that can defend against somebody else coming in. So the idea is that you assume breach, you assume that you're insecure, right? Or not that you're insecure, but you assume a breach. And from there, you harden everything even on the inside. That's the end of my analogy. That's it.
Oh, that's a good analogy. I like it. And so you are obviously much more up to speed with, like, I don't want to say the buzzwords, but like the terms, because they're always changing for this and that, right? So zero trust, I had to look it up, and I really think to me, it just emphasized, I don't want to say age old, but the whole like defense in depth idea, in that I can't count how many times in the brief stint where I was doing that stuff, that we would find some problem, and they would be like, yeah, but you have to be an admin to do that, or you have to be already have to be a user to do that, or you already have to, or you'd have to have database access to do that, or those kinds of things. And then after a few years of doing that work at the Asseco, half of the really cool big exploits we did were a combination of those damn things. Without all the little holes, we wouldn't have been able to do anything cool. So that's at least for what it sounded like to me, like zero trust kind of meant, is even though they are a user, even though you are in a database, you still just assume they're a bad guy.
Yeah. It's getting at it, right? So I think you've probably ran into a bunch of zero trust principles and policies, and not even realize it because your organization implemented them in a way that was transparent to you,
Oh yeah.
right? So I knew the first one. Hey, there's a Nagel. Um, hey Nagel, how are you?
Good.
Fantastic. We're talking about zero trust. Something I'm sure you're intimately familiar with where you work.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna stop because we have an expert. So Nagel, what does zero trust mean to you?
Well,
Go.
by default, I guess by default, I think zero trust would be whatever is built is not trusted and gets burnt down and rebuilt very quickly. Nothing lasts long in the cloud, and by default, out of the box, everything is permission to be not trusted.
Cool. So
Maybe that makes
So-
sense.
So
it
infrastructure as code, such that it can easily go away and come back. I like that idea as a.
Oh, dude, it's awesome.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I like the idea from a security standpoint. I never really thought about it. Always liked the idea from a repeatability and a move. You can move things around. You can repeat. You can dump it. Whatever. But from a security standpoint, dig it.
so
Yeah,
so
because nothing persists, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody gets in, it's gone, like the next day.
Well,
Yep. So we've touched on a good number of the tenets that I have listed. So verify explicitly, right? And so John, I think that was what you were getting at with the, don't trust the admin, rotate this in the keys, like always make sure that like this person or this entity, I don't even want to say person because it could be a device or it could be, a server, but always making sure that everything is verified. And so when server to server communication happens, it's verified, and you make sure that these servers are in fact things that you want to talk to. You verify the external stuff that's coming in, right? You verify all of that fun crap. So that was one that I think, John, you were touching on. Also, use of least privilege is a duh thing, at least for those in security, and it's just extending that some more, right? So that you're checking things as you make requests to those principals. You're not having like long-lived credentials, right? And I think about this like every time I try and access, we'll say Confluence, right, where I work, and it re-asks for credentials. It's in an automated form and it's using SSO, and so it makes things easy. But I know there's like always a thing where it's like, yep, re-authenticate. Not every access to Confluence, but like each day. Talk about assuming the breach. Nagel touched on automate and orchestrate, right? And so tearing down servers occasionally. Again, assuming that a breach has happened, you can pull one down, put a new one up, and then rotate those certificates in an automated fashion. While I was researching this, right, it sounds like Google's moved to rotating, I think, every 90 days, their certificates, and then they used to be like every 3 years. So, making sure that like if a breach has happened, assuming a breach has happened, you're shortening that window and reducing risk. Nobody's touched on encryption. And Aaron hasn't had to talk much, and I know, Aaron, you don't have the tech background.
yeah. Aaron, go deep into
Go
encryption.
deep into
What's your
encryption.
favorite.
See, and
We'll bail you out.
what's kind of interesting with me is I touched on some of it when I took cryptography, but that was one of the keys that they were talking about is you also need to rotate how you're doing your encryption. So part of that too is making sure you're rotating how your passwords are set up, because you never want to trust that, oh, somebody else is using my password. I think one of the other big keys that you see too with device specifics is a lot of times companies will disable the USB ports if you aren't taking stuff that way. I can't take home work with me or to give to somebody else, or I can't come in with a thumb drive that I found and just plug it into a computer and now I've breached my system. So that's one of the other things that you got to watch too, with making sure you don't trust necessarily everybody inside too, because If I remember right, that was actually how a nuclear research facility got hacked. Is it was a thumb drive that was left out.
Yeah, I think I heard
Did-
about that one. So I'm going to
Did
lead
any
the
of you-
witness a
Snap,
little
baby.
bit. Aaron,
Oh, go ahead.
what should be encrypted? And that'll round out your
And-
answer. I know I'm putting you on the spot. I'm trying to fill data there while you talk. While you think.
A lot of the things, the key things to encrypt is anything of high level value. Not necessarily 100% is necessary to encrypt, but you want to make sure. Yeah, I know you see a lot more of that on your side than mine, but I mean, even like with where I work, they do software as a service still. So even though that's proprietary, that's all proprietary to them. They're going to want to encrypt that data so that I don't rent it from them, figure out how it's going to work, and then just use it myself. Cancel the contract.
I would say you're like 90% there. So close. Like really, really. And I think like John could probably help you finish it off. This
That
is fun.
sounded dirty, but no, I'm not. I'm not
PG
sure what you're
stream,
getting at.
John.
Really, right? I mean, yeah, I'm not sure I'm picking up exactly what you're.
So I think what I was going for is encrypt everything, right? So data in rest, data in transit needs to be encrypted. If you're assuming breach, right, you want to assume that like somebody has access to that system or has access to the communication that's happening from point to point. So encrypt all the things. And generally speaking, using big giant broad brushes, it doesn't cost a whole lot to do that encryption. Those that are playing on embedded devices and such will probably yell and scream at me because sometimes the cost goes up on those things. But generally, when we're talking network, encrypting things doesn't hurt, so it should be.
VPN for tunneling for remote workers and things like that.
So it's interesting that you bring up VPN, right? So VPN was traditionally like more on that M&M moat security, right? It was like I can trust this connection coming in, and then you got access to a bunch of different things.
Right.
Zero Trust is moving away from that model, right? Not completely removing away from the VPN model, but not saying like, hey, we're not going to trust you just because you're on the VPN. We still verify you along the way.
But to be clear, VPNs and the reason why VPNs existed in the first place was because you were connecting to corporate resources that were, in a data center or something like that, right? So many corporate resources and everything else now is in the cloud that it's like, I mean, how are you going to separate that?
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons the zero trust models were really coming about, and like that's when I started seeing more of my clients start talking about zero trust. Was they're like moving to the cloud and like, hey, we've got this resource, we don't own it. I want to make sure it's secure. We've got internal people that are going to connect to it. Need to make sure it's secure. And I think that's really where the zero trust model came in. To John's point earlier, it's just an extension of what we've always said. You just had to like apply it in a different context.
Did you guys? This is a random thing that made me think of this when we were talking about encryption and whatnot. Did you guys ever mess with that app that would scan the laptops and thumb drives as people were leaving the offices? Because
No.
it would look within one of the big things they always touted was like Microsoft documents, where if you have a given document and you've like deleted images and added new images and you've had it for like years for like a slide deck or something, that those images and the stuff is always still just there. It's just kind of hidden from you over time, and their software would find all that crap. And I remember the story being told of they were giving him grief about that there really wasn't there like some general, and they're like, okay, we'll come over here, and he brought it up and showed him like all the information was actually in the set of slides that he had, and he was like, oh yeah, you shut that down right now first, and then okay, cool, we're good, your software's good. It was pretty neat. I don't know. I don't remember where that site was, but we hit them with the
That's
Seiko. It was pretty neat.
it's wild. You would think those
I
bits
will
and
say
pieces would get overwritten.
Yeah.
I tried to use something like that because we had hard drives that I mean there was pictures and stuff we wanted to try and recover, and what I had access to was not strong enough to recover all of that.
Yep, I've never played with any of that.
Yeah, the military and the government in general has very strict rules about getting rid of hardware, hard drives, all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Did
Where
you
you have
guys
to
ever
actually,
take the CDs and
oh
turn them
yeah,
into
man,
clear discs? That was fun.
yeah. There's
Yeah.
all kinds of weird, like overwrite and rewrite and overwrite and rewrite like 12 times or something like that for every single hard drive before you get rid of it.
I remember when the office, I'm not going to say which one, but the office got the fun little tool in the IT department that ran the essentially a piston through the platters on a
Mm-hmm.
hard disk.
That's right. Or the
Yeah.
degausser. We had a degausser as well.
Yeah, it had the degausser, but also, like, no kidding, like, just drove a rod into the hard
Yep.
disks. Like, oh, loud too.
So for the viewers that might not know, the majority of people who will show up on this were at least Air Force related at one point or not. It makes me think of other times too, like the software I worked on for the longest time was used in facilities. And I remember the first time we went TDY, and we were helping him with like a new major version we were doing, and we had a little picture, and we wanted or phone, and we wanted to take a picture of. Actually, I guess we had proper cameras at that point, and they quickly called out the fact that the devices that were sitting right behind us were not the kind you can take pictures of. So it was always
Mhm.
fun living in those worlds.
Yep. Yep. What camera, right, Nagel?
Indeed.
Yep. All right. Well, there was a couple of points that I think I should at least mention in passing before we move on to our next topic. One of them was segmenting your network, like micro segmentation. Also, kind of a well-done thing, and just taking another one of the principles that most folks are using and applying it to the nth degree. And then continuous monitoring and validation was the last tenet that hasn't been mentioned. And I know we've mentioned it on previous episodes, where you should be doing the logging and the monitoring, and making sure you're mitigating threats as they come in as quickly as you can. So another obviously well-done principle, but it's important to mention along with zero trust. All right. So we did talk a little bit about careers just a few seconds ago, and how a lot of us have come from the Air Force. Wanted to talk about career goals and like career paths for just a little bit. Before I get into that, later we're going to have one of our recorded episodes because I'm taking some time off. That's just going to talk about, or that's just going to have each of us talk about our history and work history, some personal history. Like, it's an episode about the hosts. And I'm fully going to like dive into this question later. So, and just prefacing before I ask, John, in one sentence, what did you want to be when you grow up? When you grew up, think like middle school, high school time. You thought you were going to be
The first thing I thought,
yeah.
not in East Texas. That was
Okay.
yeah. I really didn't know.
Okay. So you didn't know, couldn't have known you would have landed where you are today.
Nope. It was just the tests, the Air Force wise for software engineering, the
ASVAB
ADPQ or
and
what?
EDPT.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
tests are pretty much why I ended up as a software engineer. I didn't really have any experience, didn't really know much about it,
No
but tested
kidding.
well enough that they said, "Hey, you should be a software developer." I was like, "Okay." I
No
was a military
kidding.
brat, so my dad, I grew up, different Air Force bases and everything, and I was like, you know what? It seemed like a pretty good life my dad had in the Air Force, but what I wanted to do, I really didn't have a. Yeah.
That's wild. All right. I usually go last, so I'll go second. I had a few different ones, but I think the leading two were either a chef Even took 1 year of French because I was gonna go study in France. I like to cook. Like you've seen me cook at LandCon. I like to cook. Pretty good at it. So that was career aspiration 1 was to be a chef. The second one was to be a software developer. I took my first coding class in 8th grade. It was QBasic. Made little like something fly across the screen. My stepdad was a programmer, and I was like, I'm gonna do programming. Things happened. Ended up going into the Air Force. Still got programming, which was awesome. But could not have guessed that my career path would have gone where it is today. I'm gonna go with Aaron next. Aaron, if we would have talked to middle school or high school you in as few sentences as possible, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So ultimately, where I had landed senior year was accounting. I actually started out as an accounting major.
Okay.
So it's torn between that and history.
Nerd.
I don't think you're in accounting.
Sorry.
That's
What?
That's his wife.
Mhm.
I don't think you're in accounting today. All right.
No.
And last one that's below me, Nagel. In a sentence or two, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Fighter pilot.
Fighter pilot.
Nice.
So
Yep.
Not just pilot, fighter pilot.
Fighter pilot. Yep.
I dreamt of that at one point, but it never happened. All right.
Was it Top Gun, the Nintendo game that was impossible that made you want to do that?
No, I was just obsessed with World War II and fighter planes and wanting to fly.
That's cool.
I was when I joined the Air Force, I was gonna become an officer to go fly the F-22.
Mm-hmm.
That also didn't happen.
Turns out,
as it turns out, there wasn't a path from AFWE to F-22. I don't know. Yeah. So I'm supposed to talk
Random
about
note.
Yes.
Sorry. You know what I really wanted to be? There was a good run, but the Air Force, I say my first chief freaking screwed me out of it. I really wanted to be on the Air Force Honor Guard. I was in a drill team in tech school. I got to my first base and oh my gosh, I tried out for the Air Force Honor Guard, and then they changed the rules and said that you had to be at your first base and be on the base honor guard for a year. And then so I went to my first base, and my chief said, nope, you're augmentee. And I was like, but I have to be on the base honor guard if I want to try out for the Air Force Honor Guard. Like I have to. And he's like, okay, that's nice. You're augmentee, and they wouldn't even let me try it. So I was, man, I'm still pissed about that.
John, I'm gonna keep our tangent going for a hot second longer. I showed up to my first base and said I want to join the honor guard because I did like the black rope at tech school. Said I want to go join honor guard. They're like, well, hold up, you need to get through your CDCs. Is that what they are?
Yeah.
All right, hold up. You need to get through your CDCs, and then we'll talk about letting you join honor guard. Not even 2 weeks later, what happened, John?
Augmentee. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was fine. I even told them, I was like, can I do freaking both? Because it's not like they're not like augmentee matters when you go to like different threat cons and all that good stuff. Honor guard is like you're off time or different thing. Like I'll do both. That's fine. I can't do this unless I do this. And like,
John, no. I was on gate duty for like a month at a time.
Oh yeah.
Like not during threat con or anything like that. It was just like, all right.
Yeah. You did your rotations. Yeah. You did your normal shift. But I mean, like from what I understood of honor guard, at least as far as I remember, it was not during work hours. Like I could have, I thought, done both maybe, but he was just like, nope.
Honor guard used to have rotations, right? But yeah, I was like, what happened to me finishing my CDs? They're like, oh, you'll be fine.
Ooh. Yeah. So I didn't know we had that in common. Cheers. Yeah. Also, fuck those guys, because that still pisses me off to this day, which is obvious.
Do you know how many times I volunteered for honor guard after they asked for our honor guard volunteers?
How many? Yeah, they just wouldn't let me. I was at Brooks in San Antonio. Vast majority civilian, so there was a very small amount of military to do all the things, which is, sucked. Anyway.
All right, so I had a point that I was getting to before we dove onto that tangent. I'd say it's safe to say that that for the most part, everybody's current position was nowhere where they thought it would be. Right. So like if you set long-term career goals like that, I'm like, eh. And I think the point that I was getting to is if we're gonna talk career goals or give any advice on career goals, and Nagel's the old person here, so he might be the best person to give some insight. But I think I like to think of my career goals. I live in Florida, so like a hurricane path, right? Like the things that are really close that I can predict, I can be like, yep, I'm going to set a path and do this thing. As we get further out, that cone, like if you look at hurricane paths, that cone starts getting a little bit bigger, a little bit wider of where it could go. Yeah, you're kind of like vectoring, but like, expect some change and some flexibility as that career path goes out. I'm not a fan of 5-year plans. I think they're silly. Like I'm going to do this in 5 years. I don't know what's going to happen in 5 years. 5 years ago, we weren't using ChatGPT. And that makes a huge difference for some of the work I do on a day-to-day basis. So, yeah, Nagel, any advice that you give for like career paths?
Well, similar to like you said, I ended up where I am at based on, knowing people and, you know, luck of the draw sometimes, like just keeping my options open and being flexible in order to do things that I enjoy. I mean, uh, from a career standpoint, for me, learning is something that I love to do. So that never changes in security. There's always new stuff to learn. So I'm never really bored. I'm not doing like Aaron said, he was wanted to be an accountant. I think that would have gotten somewhat boring at some point. Um, so
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I was really struck by I think something our CEO said. Is when he was talking about his ascension to CEO and all of that, is that I'm hoping he didn't say this on an internal meeting, but like he had said like that, and this is not a direct quote, but he had never like pursued the next role per se. He was always, the company needed him to do something and he filled that role, and the company needed him to do something else and he filled that role. And if you look at his career history within Synopsys, like it's, CFO, I think was one of his titles, and then like head of development, and then like filling these roles and like, probably becoming more and more well rounded as he went. But, was always flexible and moved. And I think that eventually allowed him to move into the CEO role when he was called upon to do so. So it's not that he ever was like, oh, I'm going to go get the CFO role and do this and like really pursue that. Business needed the CFO. He was like, he stepped into it and was able to do it. Business needed something else. He stepped into that role and was able to do it. So, John?
I think one of the things
Yeah.
that is interesting about what you just said was there's a difference between small companies and big companies, in that, sometimes being able to be flexible in a small company is, yeah, you got to do whatever you got to do. In a bigger company, it's a bit more defined, and you can specialize and go deeper into a particular area and be the expert in that area. In a smaller company, it's a little bit more complicated because there's a lot more to do with less people to do it. So sometimes, that's another thing to think about too. Big company versus small company.
This is where I remind Nagel that Synopsys has over 20,000 employees and we're not small. Um, John, how about career goals? Like any advice for like how you've navigated to where you're at?
Yeah, I've given this some thought because I think one of the everyone finds the things they love to do, and one thing I actually dig doing. I don't dig management, but I do dig mentoring. So I've always ended up in team lead, you know, principal engineering kind of roles because I dig showing people things and teaching people things. But I say all that because I've talked about this a lot. I've thought about this a lot. I think one of the things I think people need to understand is to be okay with realizing that you might realize, to your hurricane example, that you started going down a route and you just don't like that route. And you might just be like, you know what, this isn't for me. You don't have to go a route because you think that, like, I think it's not as bad as it used to be. But for example, you don't have to be a manager. Like there's, I think, some still holdover, and it's not true anymore. It used to be basically the mental picture of what a career meant was you worked in the trenches and then eventually you got promoted to management, and that is what a career looks like. And especially at least in the IT world, that's just not true anymore. The you can not go into management and have an incredibly productive career, because I did a little bit of management and I realized it wasn't for me. I don't I don't enjoy it. I like making things. Just like I went in the software security thing. And I enjoyed it at first, but at a certain point, I had the same thing. I was like, you know what? I just don't dig this. I like making things. I like being an engineer. And it made me think of, so I got like as a kid, growing up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, my there's no bigger iconic sports person than Michael Jordan. And he gave us a little uh, fireside chat at DraftKings today, and he talked about, which I think is true, is finding your passion. And I tell my kids this all the time. It's whatever it is. I think if you find something you love to do, you'll get good at it. But if you force yourself to go around because you feel like it's what you have to do, you won't really excel. Now, obviously, some routes pay better than others, but yeah, I think finding your passion and going all in on that, I think just it pays off long term. And if you find something that doesn't feel like a fit, find some other route.
So 2 points on that, then I'm going to pass it over to Aaron. One, you missed the opportunity for a good quote. Do what you love
Ooh.
and you'll never work a day in your life.
Right? Great quote.
Right? Two, you can get paid very well at literally anything if you're the best in that field.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like, and I do mean literally everything. You can get paid very well changing tires if you're doing it for an F1 team and you're the best in that field at changing tires. So, like, pay maybe not an obstacle, right? If you're very, very good at it.
And so,
yeah.
to that point, like Digital did this, and the company I came for before this, Mediday, did the same thing. At a certain point, it kind of splits between like, hey, manager route and technical route, um, and both get paid really well. And a lot of places, you have to be really high in management to get paid higher than the high-end technical route. Like, think of it, I always thought of it like agents and their stars they represent. The stars get paid more than the person who's managing them because they bringing a talent to your F1 tire changing example. You've got that talent, you've put the work and you've become really good at it, you'll get paid. But even that, don't feel stuck with that. Like, I left my last job as a principal engineer because I wasn't feeling it anymore, and I went and took a lower role at a company where the challenges were going to be bigger and I was going to enjoy it more because it was much more of a complex environment, because I love what I do and I want to do that more. And you can make money at it if you put passion in it, I think.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
I think so. All right, Aaron, I think you had stuck taking us home last time, and you're going to get stuck taking us home again this time.
It's all good. Honestly, I'll disagree with you to an extent on the 5-year plan. And my point to this is, with where I'm sitting, the absolute thing that is, if you are basically set, you can get hired on whatever, is the PMP certification. That for me is a 5-year goal, because you're supposed to have 5 years of project management experience. So that broad spectrum, like, is kind of like you said, don't narrow yourself into a corner, keep broad goals. My goal is to work in IT, but that's not necessarily where I start out. Project management is very broad. I can jump into any sector and jump back and forth between sectors almost interchangeably. Yes, there's going to be some specifics, but it's not as specific as some of the other career fields. Kind of to John's point, though, find what you love. I started out, my bachelor's is in business management. My minor was in IT. I really wish I would have switched them around at some point, because now I'm trying to get more into that side. But when I first started school, I wasn't even thinking about having an information technology as a minor. So bear in mind that things change too.
I mean, that's a really good point, and I think that the 5-year plan may matter more earlier in your career, where you might need to have a little bit more direction on where things are going to go, and check boxes that you need to hit, like getting your PMP. I don't mean to call it a checkbox, but like that's a goal that you
Right.
need in order to get into the field that you're trying to get into. So
I don't
that's a
think
fair
there's
point.
anything wrong with the 5-year goal, as long as you understand it at any point. You could be like, screw that goal. I want a new one.
Right. And that's where you're supposed to check in as you go. Is this still what I want? Is this still what I need? 10 years out, who knows 10 years out? I mean, I read an article today that Microsoft laid off, 1,300 employees. So, you've got constant movements as to what you're actually going to see.
All right, and with that scary note of layoffs in the tech field, I think that's it for today's episode. So today on the In-Secure-Ity Podcast, I hope that you found some of the discussion, about zero trust insightful, gain a little bit of valuable tips on, setting some career goals, whether that's early in your career, or late in your career, and, being flexible. I do ask once again to remember to follow us and connect on social media. The links are down there. The links will also be all over the place, LinkedIn, wherever else. And if you've got any thoughts or questions, or you just want to join the conversation, right, make sure you hit us on those socials as well. Until next time, stay secure, stay connected, and I'm Drew Thompson, signing off.